Welcome to the Aleck Pain to Performance podcast, hosted by Dr. Jake Aleck and Dr. Kyle Richmond. Here we discuss health, fitness, and nutrition-related topics. Dr. Richmond and I are chiropractic physicians based out of Frankfort, Illinois. We treat all things pain. If you move it, we treat it. For more information about the clinic or us, check out AleckPainToPerformance.com. We appreciate your time and attention and hope you enjoy the show.
We're here with the Aleck Pain Performance podcast. Something we're going to talk about today, we've heard a lot of lately, is stretching. There seems to be a lot of confusion out there of when do I do it, how long, what's the best stretch. So, Jay, kind of take it away with, where should we start? What is stretching? How about that?
Yeah, so let's always start with the goal in mind. What are we stretching for? Right? There's a lot of teams and coaches in here always ask, when's the best time for us to stretch? Before the game, after the game? Then we'll have some people say, I'm super inflexible. When do I, stretch to get that better? Yeah. So for more of the exercise component of it, stretching is always meant to be done at the end of exercise. Right. So if we're working out or we're playing a football game, baseball game, anything that's athletic, let's save that for the end. Yes. And that's more done with long holds, right? And we talk about it all the time here in clinic that whenever we stretch, it's much better to do 1 or 2 positions for a lot longer holds than 8 or 10 things for 30 seconds. Right. Because what's the literature even saying now when it comes into stretch positions?
Research shows us now that we have to sit in a stretch for at least that 2-minute mark is where we really start seeing change. Anything under that, we tend to see the change in the neurologic system. So it's like a quick, trick to the system. We can hold a hamstring stretch for 10 seconds, okay, we got a little more motion, but then we come back that next day, okay, we still have that same range of motion, we're not seeing the improvement. And in sports, we always did it beforehand. We're do a quick stretch as our warm-up, and that was kind of it. You didn't really see yourself getting better.
Right, and it goes right back to the goal, because if our goal is to maximize a range of motion, so then the next day we're more flexible, we actually have to change something. Right. And when the literature, what it says, and when we say literature, we just mean research, what kind of is the most up-to-date in the body right now in science, it says that we have to hold things for a minimum of 2 minutes for things to change in the body. So,
and when we say change, it's the actual structure of the muscle, the tissue, not just, okay, hey, I can get more motion, but things on the microscopic level, we're actually seeing the change happen.
Right, so we're not going to do that before any sort of exercise or sport because we don't want that to be our goal. Our goal is to do that after things because we're calming the system down when we're stretching. Right. In order to get into a 2-minute stretch, you got to be chill out, relax, and
right.
Let the thing kind of go. Everyone's kind of held the stretch for 15, 20 seconds where you're just foot on the counter, oh, all right, now I'm ready to run. We're kind of past that. Now we're in 2022 now, right? So when it comes into warming up for exercises or sports, it's all about getting your heart rate up. So if I'm warming up, I'm doing my high knees, I'm doing my butt kicks, I'm doing my lateral lunges, just getting the body moving for whatever we're doing. But if I'm finishing anything, that's when maybe you work with one of us or you work with another health professional that says, hey, your hips are pretty brutal. We got to get into those. Mm-hmm. All right, maybe I'm doing a hip stretch at the end of my training session or baseball game or whatever it is for that 2-minute hold at least to actually change something day in and day out.
Right, because that's what we say, it's almost like an extension of your training. Hey, that stretch at the end is really crucial. And that's why, we're telling you that 2-minute mark. And kind of back to what you said about the whole calming the system down. When we do that stretch, you should be at a 5 or 6 out of 10 intensity, something you can relax into for that 2 minutes versus spending that 10 seconds forcing yourself in that stretch. Yeah. It's got to be something that's, you're able to breathe and relax into.
Yeah, I would say that's what a common fault most people do is they hold too aggressive stretches that they just can't hold for a lot of time. So then they never reach that 2-minute mark. So just like Kyle said, we teach people in here that 5 or 6 is a maximum out of 10 intensity to hold because if it's more than that, you just can't hold it for 2 minutes. Right. So we'd rather have you feel what you're stretching where it needs to be with lesser intensity, but holding that for longer so something actually changes versus a real aggressive stretch that you can only hold for 20, 30 seconds.
So let's recap that. What would be some common faults we see? We said, okay, holding it for only 10, 15 seconds, doing something really forcefully where we can't relax into. What are some other common ones you kind of see with stretching?
So time, right, when we're doing it. We're not doing it before we work out. We're doing it after we work out.
Right.
Set in stone, one. Number two, let's be more specific with stretches than just stretch everything, right? Sometimes CrossFit gets the fault of this, or even golf sometimes too, where people realize that like their stretching session ends up being longer than whatever their activity is that they're calming down from.
Right.
And if that's the case, like if you got pain that you just can't shake and you need to stretch for 45 to 60 minutes in order to calm it down, or you find yourself unable to put your arm over your head unless you're doing 45 to 60 minutes of stretching stuff to do so, that's when it's best to work with a professional and say, all right, there may be a better approach at this.
Right.
But in general, time, so when we're doing it, and then our hold, making sure that if the goal is to get more flexibility, let's hold for that minimum of 2 minutes.
And you're saying things we want to focus on is we should be picking like one or two things we really need to work to stretch on. You shouldn't have to stretch your whole body, in order to do some sort of physical activity. Pick those one or two, and that's what's really important, right?
Yeah, and medically, that's what we do. I mean, there's a lot of times where patients come in here and here's my packet of stretches I'm doing every day. One, typically they're not holding them long enough, so they're not getting the actual response that they should.
Right.
But two, they're just doing way too much, where we may assess them and go through something and say, yep, go to page 4, exercise 3A, that's the one you need to do, get rid of all the rest, but hold it for this amount of time.
Right. And then one thing I want to touch on too is, I know you say after a workout, but is there another time of the day we can stretch too? Like, would it be okay just, hey, I do my stretch in the morning away from my physical activity, or like maybe later at night before I go and watch TV or something?
Yeah, I mean, compliance is the science, right? So we're not going to nitpick the time of day to be overly like, oh, it has to be done at this second.
Right.
Whatever's the most efficient time for you to get it in, whether it's the end of the day or if you're a morning guy that kind of wants to get going and just start your day off right away.
Right.
As long as you're not training right after that, but just compliance whenever you can get it in, especially when you're in like the more lifestyle realm. You're not like a Nicky Allegretti or someone that's performing on Sundays and trying to win a Super Bowl. I mean,
I just want my hips to feel better so I can just walk and do my daily normal stuff.
Just get it in.
Just get in.
Just get in.
All right, so quick recap here. We talked about, again, when, we just hammered, how long, it's 2 minutes, right? And then how often should people be stretching?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on them, right? In general, we give kind of the technology stretches that get us out of these positions that we're in all the time.
Right.
And typically, and that gets into a whole nother podcast episode of, are we stretching tissue or are we moving joints, right? Because moving joints is a whole different system of getting a response out of that versus stretching muscles or tissue. And a lot of times people come into us doing the whole stretching thing, but we get their joints moving better, and then all of their tightness that they feel in their muscles goes away. So that's a whole different realm. But when it comes into how often you should be stretching, I mean, we would say hips are a big one, ankles are a big one, and even shoulders, depending on how you use your body.
Depending on what you're doing.
But all stretching goes into depending on how you exercise, how you use it on a daily basis.
I mean, we have our guidelines here, but a lot of this stuff comes down to it depends, and that's when getting an assessment is so crucial, because we can kind of make that easy for you. Hey, you've been stretching your hamstrings for how long? Maybe this is a back thing, or this is maybe a hip thing, and we can just get rid of that.
Because there's always a reason for tightness,
right?
Tightness is a brain down thing, because the brain is making something tight, and we want to problem solve with our patients to make sure, all right, let's understand why this area has always been tight on you.
Right.
We couldn't tell you how many times high schoolers or grade school kids are in here and mom and dad says, Johnny is the most inflexible person ever. We'll do something making them move better at X and O area, and then magically Johnny can touch his toes.
Right.
And we didn't stretch their hamstrings once.
Right, yeah, because you couldn't just change that. If it's the hamstring thing and we just do a couple movements in that small window, you can't just all of a sudden make that.
Right. So there's always more to it, but in general, understanding the timing, though, is huge of how long and when to do it.
Right.
Cool?
All right, I think we hit it all.
All right. Good job, man.